Have you ever convinced yourself of something that wasn't quite true? Maybe you told yourself you weren't really nervous before a big presentation, even though your hands were shaking. Or perhaps you believed you were better at a skill than you actually were, only to be surprised by the results. This isn't just a quirky human trait, it's a fundamental part of how our minds work. Today we're diving deep into the fascinating science of self-deception. So self-deception is more than just lying to ourselves. It's a motivated information processing bias, where our minds favor welcome information over unwelcome truths. We do this not just to feel good, but to navigate our complex social world. I'm going to introduce you to an idea that we evolved into self-deceiving human beings. But why would evolution shape us to deceive ourselves? The core idea is that self-deception evolved to help us deceive others more effectively. If you believe in your own lie, you're less likely to give yourself away. We're going to explore the evolutionary origins of self-deception, how it helps us socially, the mental architecture that makes it possible, and the many ways it manifests in our daily lives. By the end, you'll see self-deception as a sophisticated tool for survival and social success. Hey everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching day 45 of my channel, Henry's Millions, where I dive deep into psychology, philosophy, spirituality, and mind mastery, helping you unlock your personal potential and understand the forces that shape your life. Today's talk is based on an influential research paper titled The Evolution and Psychology of Self-Deception in 2011 by William von Hippel and Robert Trivers. This work explores how self-deception evolved as a tool to help us deceive others more effectively, why our minds are built to both deceive and be deceived, and the many ways self-deception shapes our everyday lives. I'll be walking you through the key ideas and findings from this paper, so you can better understand the science behind why sometimes we believe our own lies. So why self-deception? There's an interpersonal deception advantage here. Imagine you're trying to convince someone of something that isn't true. If you know you're lying, you might show nervousness, hesitation, or other subtle cues that give you away. But self-deception eliminates these tells. When you believe your own story, you're more convincing. So this is a key evolutionary advantage. Better deception means better survival and reproduction. So lying is mentally taxing. You have to remember the truth, construct a lie, and keep track of both in your mind. But self-deception lightens this load, which is called a cognitive load. If you genuinely believe your own lie, you don't have to juggle two versions of reality. This frees up mental resources for other important tasks. And if you're caught lying, the consequences can be severe. This is called retribution, where there could be a loss of trust, social exclusion, even retaliation. But if you can claim you genuinely believed your own lie, you might avoid punishment. You could say, I didn't mean to deceive you. I was convinced it was true. This is called plausible deniability. But why does deception evolve in the first place? So deception and detection are locked in a constant evolutionary arms race, right? Deception and detection of deception. Just as animals evolve new ways to deceive, those that are being deceived evolve better ways to detect it. So this back and forth has led to increasingly subtle forms of deception, including self-deception, which helps us hide our true motives, even from ourselves. Now, natural selection doesn't favor perfect accuracy in perception. Instead, it favors useful deception and its detection. Whatever works best for survival and reproduction in a competitive social world. The research shows that detection rates for deception are surprisingly low in lab studies, often just above chance. I was reading some of these studies and it was like 55% at best. Now these are in studies, but in real life, high-stakes situations, like police interrogations, for example, detection rates can jump as high as 72%, and that was out of a study as well. So why is there a difference? So for one, lab studies often use inconsequential lies and don't allow cross-examination. In real life, when consequences matter and people can question each other, detection is much more accurate. People are better at detecting deception also when they know each other well. Familiarity allows people to spot unique, individual tells that reveal when someone is lying. Each person has their own unique tells when lying. These are subtle cues like shifts in speech, facial expressions, or body language. And close acquaintances learn these idiosyncratic signs over time, making deception harder to sustain in familiar relationships. But self-deception isn't just about avoiding detection, it's also about gaining an edge. Confident, self-assured people are more likely to attract mates, allies, resources. Overconfidence can be more socially persuasive than accuracy. Think about charismatic leaders. They often believe in their own vision, even when it's unrealistic. So most of us like to think we're better than average. Smarter, more attractive, more competent. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's a form of self-deception. We genuinely believe our self-enhancing stories, and this boosts our confidence and our social influence. For example, studies show that people rate themselves as more attractive than they actually are, even when shown their own photos. They prefer images that have been subtly enhanced to be more effective. Another example, in job interviews, people who believe in their own abilities come across as more competent, even if their actual skills are average. Self-enhancement and derogation of others, this is a new concept, is derogation of others, are two sides of the same coin. This is where, in other words, putting other people down, derogation of others. By seeing others as less competent or less moral, we elevate ourselves. Now, this is especially common when we feel threatened or insecure. And it's a powerful self-deceptive strategy that allows people to elevate their own self-image by casting rivals or out-group members in a negative light. This process is especially common when individuals feel threatened or insecure, because it helps restore their self-esteem and maintain a sense of superiority. For example, in a workplace setting, employees who feel their own performance is being questioned might exaggerate the mistakes of their colleagues or competitors. By focusing on the flaws of others, they create a contrast that makes their own performance appear more favorable. Now, importantly, these negative assessments are often genuinely believed, not just performed for show, making the self-deception more convincing, both internally and externally. So, all self-evaluations are relative. We judge ourselves in comparison to others, and self-deception helps us come out on top, at least in our own minds. So this is, we can criticize and put other people down in our own minds all day if it will make us feel better, and some people do. There are interpersonal benefits as well. Confidence and self-enhancement, they attract allies, resources, and social status. And people are drawn to those who believe in themselves, even if that belief is inflated. So let's talk for a little bit about how the mind is both the deceiver and the deceived, right? Because when you talk about deception, there's two people or more involved. But self-deception, it's just the individual. But they're playing both parts, the deceiver and the deceived. So there's something called a dissociation in the mind. How can the self be both the deceiver and the deceived? The answer lies in the mind's architecture. Our minds are not unitary. They're made up of different systems that don't always communicate. For example, there's conscious versus unconscious memories. We can remember something consciously, but also have an unconscious memory that contradicts it. There's conscious versus unconscious attitudes, not just memories. Attitudes could be both conscious and unconscious. We can hold on to one attitude explicitly and have another attitude implicitly. There's also automatic and controlled processes. Some mental processes are automatic and outside of our awareness, while others are under our control and deliberate. So these splits allow us to hold conflicting beliefs without feeling the tension. For example, you might consciously believe you're not prejudiced, but your automatic reasons tell a different story. So these dissociations allow the self to be both the deceiver and the deceived. The conscious mind can be convinced of a lie, while the unconscious mind retains the truth, or vice versa. The mind is not a single unified entity, but rather a collection of systems that can operate independently and sometimes in conflict. This division allows us to hold beliefs, memories, and attitudes at different levels of awareness, some accessible to conscious thought and others operating beneath the surface. For instance, imagine a person who genuinely believes they're not prejudiced, yet shows subtle biases in their behavior, such as being more hesitant to hire a candidate from a particular background for a job. Their explicit conscious attitudes may be egalitarian, but implicit, unconscious associations can still influence their actions without their awareness. This dissociation between conscious and unconscious attitudes is a common example of how the mind can be both the deceiver and the deceived. And similarly, people often have conscious goals, like wanting to be healthy, but they're sometimes hijacked by automatic habits or impulses, like reaching for a dessert when stressed. These automatic processes can run counter to our stated intentions. We may not even notice the inconsistency until it's pointed out. So in this way, the mind's architecture allows for self-deception by enabling conflicting motives and beliefs to coexist, with only some of them available to our conscious awareness. Let's move on now to something called biased information search. There's a number of different types of biased information search, and I'll show you how that ties into how they deceive ourselves, allow us to deceive ourselves. The first is called amount of searching. So we often stop searching for information when we find what we like. For example, if you get a positive result on a medical test, you might avoid further testing that could reveal bad news. Like in studies, people stop waiting for a health test result sooner if they think the result will be negative. And then after making a purchase, people avoid looking at alternatives to avoid buyer's remorse. These all came out of studies. There's something else called selective searching. So we just spoke about the amount of searching. Now there's selective searching. It's where we seek out information that confirms our preferences and avoid information that challenges them. Some examples, like politically conservative people, they watch Fox News, and liberals watch MSNBC. Each group reinforces their own worldview. Another example, smokers are less likely to seek out anti-smoking information unless they're reminded of their past kindnesses, which is a self-affirmation. And there's the third component in the biased information search is called selective attention. So even when information is available, we focus on what we want to see. For example, at a party, you might tune into a conversation that supports your views and ignore a conversation that contradicts them. Another example, older adults, when they're in a bad mood, they focus on positive stimuli and avoid negative ones, which helps them maintain their happiness. So by controlling what we see and hear, we can avoid uncomfortable truths and maintain our self-deceptions. So let's move on to something else now called biased interpretation. So remember, we just spoke about biased information searching. Now there's biased interpretation, right? So we covered how information is coming into our minds, how we're perceiving and sensing it. And now, how are we interpreting it in ways that allow us to deceive ourselves? So there is a self-serving skepticism. We're more skeptical of information that contradicts our beliefs and more accepting of information that supports them. Like, for example, in a classic study, people on both sides of the capital punishment debate were shown mixed evidence. Each side dismissed the evidence that contradicted their beliefs and accepted the evidence that supported them. And another example, climate change skeptics and believers interpret the same data in opposite ways. The interesting thing is, after these studies, people learned that everyone else did the same thing and they were shocked to find that out. There's something also called motivated reasoning. So self-affirmation can reduce this bias. Self-affirmation is a psychological process that helps people maintain a sense of self-worth and integrity, especially when faced with information that threatens their self-image. This is central to understanding how and why we sometimes allow ourselves to be open to challenging truths, and at other times, double down on self-deceptive beliefs. When people feel secure in their self-worth, they're more open to challenging information. And self-affirmation typically involves people reflecting on their important personal values, like kindness, creativity, honesty, or recalling past positive behaviors. Let's consider how self-affirmation changes the way we process information. Imagine you just received some harsh feedback at work. Normally, you might dismiss it or rationalize it away. But if beforehand you take a moment to reflect on your core values, perhaps your kindness, your dedication to family, or your creativity, you're more likely to accept the feedback and use it constructively. This is because self-affirmation buffers your self-worth. It makes you less defensive and more open to challenging truths. Now, research shows that after self-affirmation, people are even less likely to put others down or boost their own self-esteem. So self-affirmation is a powerful antidote to self-deception. That's something to remember. It helps us stay grounded in reality while maintaining our sense of worth. Let's talk about another large important concept here. There's a few. Misremembering. So this is a memory distortion where we don't recall the past as it actually happened. Instead, we remember events in ways that flatter our self-image and support our current beliefs. So this isn't just a quirk of memory, it's a systematic bias that helps us maintain a positive view of ourselves and our actions. A few examples. So after taking a study skills class, people often misremember their past abilities as worse than they actually were. So this makes their improvement seem more dramatic, reinforcing the value of the class and their own sense of progress. I mean, you must have experienced this yourself or with other people when they've taken some class or certification or study or something extra like that. Also, people tend to recall their own good behavior more easily than their bad behavior, but they don't show this bias for others. And this selective recall helps us see ourselves as more virtuous, even when our actions don't always match our ideals. Now, this is all because our memories are not objective records. They're shaped by our motivations, desires, and our self-image. Misremembering isn't just about forgetting, it's about reconstructing the past in a way that serves our current needs and protects our self-esteem. This process is especially powerful when it comes to events that challenge our sense of competence or morality. And misremembering also plays a crucial, this word is like, it's tough to pronounce after a while. Misremembering also plays a crucial role in our social relationships. By selectively recalling positive interactions and downplaying negative ones, we maintain harmony with others and reduce the risk of conflict. This isn't always conscious. Often it's an automatic process driven by our need to see ourselves as good, capable, and consistent individuals. On to another concept now. It's called rationalization. You should be familiar with this already. It's a process of inventing socially acceptable explanations for our behavior, especially when our actions might otherwise seem selfish, immoral, or inconsistent with our values. It's a way of making sense of our choices and reducing the discomfort that comes from cognitive dissonance. Few examples of rationalization. So, like selfish actions. After acting selfishly, people often claim that external pressures like deadlines or other people's demands help force their hand, rather than admitting they acted out of self-interest. Also consider free will and cheating. When people are told that free will is just an illusion, they're more likely to cheat and then justify their behavior as externally determined. This removes personal responsibility and makes the cheating seem less blameworthy. Then there is moral dissonance. When our actions conflict with our morals, we rationalize to reduce the discomfort. For example, in studies where people choose to give an onerous task, that means a bad task, to someone else, they rate their choice as fairer than observers do. So it's basically what happened in this study is that people had a bad task, and they were given an option to assign it to someone else, and they went ahead and assigned it. Observers saw it as being unfair, but the people that assigned the task, the bad task, didn't see it that way. So they rated themselves as more fairer. And this hypocrisy is reduced when people are under under cognitive load. We talked about that in the beginning of the video. So it suggests that rationalization requires mental effort and that we're aware of the unfairness, but we find ways to justify it. So let's talk about convincing convincing the self that a lie is true. Let's assume you don't lie. Self-deception can go beyond biased information gathering, selective memory, or rationalization. Sometimes people come to genuinely believe their own lies. And this process isn't just about fooling others, but about restructuring one's own perception of reality so thoroughly that the falsehood becomes the truth within the mind. In everyday life, this phenomenon is about the subtle ways our minds shape and reshape beliefs. For example, people who repeatedly recount a story with embellishments or omissions may eventually recall the altered version as if it was the original event. Now, over time, the act of telling the story molds their memory, so they honestly believe the new narrative. Another common example is the conviction people feel about their own superiority or special abilities, even in the absence of objective evidence. So this isn't just posturing for others, it's a belief that is deeply held and defended with genuine conviction. Research shows that people with strong self-enhancing beliefs are often quicker to recognize and recall information that supports their inflated self-image, even if it contradicts reality. The more they repeat these narratives to themselves and to others, the more real they become in their minds. So people who feel a lack of control, this is something very interesting here that I found in the research. It's under illusory control. People who feel a lack of control, they see patterns where none exist and believe in conspiracies. So for example, when people are made to feel powerless, they're more likely to see illusory patterns and endorse conspiracy theories. There's another point I wanted to make here about cognitive dissonance. Sorry, I'm very thirsty here, so my speech is a little bit blurred up here. When people are forced to lie, they often come to believe their own lie. So in classic experiments, people who were paid to tell others that a boring task was interesting, they later rated the task as more interesting themselves. So self-deception can be so complete that the conscious and unconscious mind are both convinced of the lie. So in terms of levels of consciousness, who is really being deceived here? In terms of conscious and unconscious knowledge, sometimes both the conscious and the unconscious mind are deceived. Other times, only the conscious mind is deceived, while the unconscious retains the truth. Like when people avoid information, neither the conscious or the unconscious mind knows the truth. And in classic self-deception, the conscious mind is deceived, but the unconscious mind knows the truth. So the depth of self-deception varies depending on context and motivation. Sometimes we're fully convinced, other times we're only partially convinced. Now, what are the costs and implications of self-deception? The benefits: self-deception brings social influence, resource acquisition, stress reduction, and happiness. Confident, happy people are more attractive to others and more successful in life. Now, what are the costs? Self-deception can lead to poor decision-making, reduced self-awareness, and ignoring real risks. Like, for example, ignoring health risks can lead to serious consequences. Another example, overconfidence can lead to financial or social blunders. But self-deception, there's a more balanced view here. It's not universally good or bad. It's contextually adaptive. It helps us thrive in some situations, but can hurt us in others. So self-deception is an evolved tool for social navigation. It helps us deceive others, gain social advantages, and maintain our self-image. We deceive to thrive, but at what cost to the truth? That's a question. Are we better off for our self-deceptions, or do they blind us to reality? Think about your own life. When has self-deception helped or hurt you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And maybe we can start a conversation about the role of self-deception in our lives. I think I might be making a few more videos about this because it really is a fascinating topic, and it's one that affects all of us. We all self-deceive to one degree or another. And thank you for watching today. I'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the video on the channel. It helps me a lot. And if you found this video useful, please share it with someone. Thank you, and watch out for the next installment. Every time.